Tech Snippets Today with Joseph Raczynski.
All right, wonderful. So today I have Arthur Breitman, co-founder of Tezos. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. This is fantastic. I've been following you guys for forever, so this is wonderful to have you on the program. So today's guest is one of the rare minds bridging the precision of science with the promise of decentralized technology. Arthur joins us to explore the philosophical and technical depth behind one of blockchain's most enduring projects. From his background in mathematics and physics to his groundbreaking architectural vision for self-amending blockchains, Arthur has long viewed the ecosystem through a lens of first principles. In this conversation, we'll discuss where Tezos stands today amid the evolving blockchain landscape and how the next phase may shape the coming wave of growth, governance, and innovation across the decentralized world. All right, Arthur. So what I would love to hear a little bit more about, I mean, you are very well known in this space, clearly, but I'd love just for those people that may not be as familiar, could you give us a little bit of history and background about yourself and the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in France, which is why I carry this accent. I
Lovely accent.
will probably carry it for the rest of my life, once the critical window is gone. Anyway, but I moved to the US I studied math and physics and financial math in France. Moved to the US in my early 20s, studied a bit more financial math, and then I worked for about a decade on Wall Street. I worked at very small hedge funds and very large banks. And I was doing mostly a quantitative analysis, statistical arbitrage, high frequency trading, this type of activities. So very math centric, very technology centric in what I was doing. So I did this for about a decade. Did a bit of robotics as well. I worked at Waymo for a little while.
Wow.
And in the midst of all this, I kind of discovered crypto like yourself very early on. So around 2010, 2011, I think heard about it from, I would say, at the very, very beginning, but didn't get interested until 2011. And then kind of fell into it, did a few projects in crypto, and then until I stumbled onto this idea of a self-amending blockchain with Tezos. So I started, I jumped in Tezos in 2014, and it was kind of a thing I was, doing like this, and it became very well known, and sort of a lot of attention in 2016 because the Tezos position paper talked about problems that at the time were completely theoretical: forking of a blockchain and the creation of multiple assets, um, the risk of smart contract bugs, and a lot of other issues like this around governance, which were theoretical and came to the forefront in 2016 with the Ethereum DAO hack and subsequent fork, with the Bitcoin block size war. So a lot of people got interested into Tezos at this time because they were like, "Hey, wait, that was prescient." And Tezos itself as a network launched in 2018. It's been operating continuously since then, and it's gone through a lot of upgrades over the years. So that's a bit about me and about Tezos in a nutshell.
Wonderful. No, that's a great start because I think there's some areas in there that I'd love to hear a bit more about, especially what you're working on currently, what's changed a little bit. So before we do that, you're clearly a Bitcoin guy. Is that right?
I don't know.
Like, I mean, you have the appreciation of it. It
I
goes way
appreciate
back.
Bitcoin. Yes,
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 yeah. So
I appreciate
previously.
Bitcoin.
So I'm
I
just,
also, there's some stuff I did not appreciate about Bitcoin early on. I think I've been interested in Tezos if I thought Bitcoin was perfect.
yes, no, totally, totally. But I think one of the things I'm kind of curious about before we launch into some of the real core aspects is some of the battles that I think Bitcoin has had. And most recently, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Bitcoin core group called Knots is
Uh,
going up against like the Taproot Wizards. And that's the idea, of course, that which goes to the fundamental aspects of some blockchains. And that's the
yeah,
idea of there's still some space being available every time the blocks are saved, so to speak. Um, and there's two groups that are going at each other. One group basically says, let's add some additional information to that. Others, like purists, saying, no, we don't want that. Um,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? Just out of curiosity, philosophically.
I mean, Well, first of all, I try to keep, I see some of that. I see it in my Twitter/X feed, and I see some
Yes.
comments from like some Bitcoin core developers that I follow, and my main reaction is like, "Ooh, I'm glad I'm not in the middle of this."
Yes.
Is my first reaction. I also think Bitcoin will be fine,
Yeah.
but yeah, just from a distance, I haven't like I'm not super familiar with your agreement. Just from a distance, I think the recent obsession against like spam and transaction had, there are definitely a few unhinged people on this side of the spectrum. Now, is it about spam? So initially, people made it very much about spam. They were like, we don't want to be spammed with JPEGs. It increased transaction cost, and an increasing transaction cost is going to make it difficult to use a network. People are going to use altcoin and so on and so forth. But first of all, that ship has sailed. The minute you decided you were not going to scale Bitcoin seriously, you condemn yourself to high transaction costs. Like that's a choice, that's a choice you've made in some sense. So don't complain about high transaction costs. If anything, embrace it, because you've also decided that your security budget is going to be contingent on being able to get any transaction costs. Now, that being said, I think inscriptions are silly. I don't think NFTs are silly. I think the idea that you need to put your data on a chain itself, as opposed to have a clean link to a distributed hash table system, like is routed through IPFS. That's a much better thing. I think IPFS links are the best technology for doing NFTs. It just makes no sense to put it on a chain. But with that said, I also don't think you should try to censor it. So now I've seen a twist on this, which is funny because it's a thing that people brought up a lot in like 2011, 2012. They're worried about illegal content being put on the chain.
Exactly.
And specifically, they don't. It's not so much that it's like, oh, if there's illegal content here, it would be bad, because, again, the blockchain is a terrible place to store content. So I don't think anyone, would store content, because they have a criminal intent, and they would say, oh, it's so convenient for me to store content here.
Right.
No, I think it would be an attack. Like you could attack. The idea is like people would attack Bitcoin by saying, I'm going to pull illegal content, and as a result, it will be very hard for people to run nodes. And it's a problem. It's a problem I used to be obsessed about, and I have some solutions. But I thought it would be a big problem over the years, and somehow it hasn't been. So fingers crossed.
Totally on the same page as you, and I've never understood why it hasn't. Again, fingers crossed, because it's shocking that someone hasn't decided to do that. Especially as powerful as Bitcoin is at this point in time. It's just we'll see. Hopefully not.
There were links to illegal content that exist. I know there were links posted on the Bitcoin blockchain to illegal content, but that that hasn't led to court orders from judges saying like you may not store the Bitcoin blockchain on your computer.
Right.
I can go deep in that. This is like one of my favorite topics. It's a bit esoteric, but
it is. It is.
The first thing I would say is, Tezos is a proof of stake blockchain, and there's certain guarantees that you give up with proof of stake, and you have famously this weak subjectivity. You're not going to basically, like, if someone presents you two chains, someone could craft a chain that would look valid from the Genesis block, and you would say, however shall I pick the right one? I can't possibly decide. There's no there's no objective criterion to pick. Not a problem in practice. Not a problem in practice. You pick the network that everyone is using. It's fine.
Well said.
So I think that it was a theoretical. It's really like people made it into a problem. It's not a problem. And the benefits you get in terms of costs from proof of stake make it largely worth it. So something that goes a little beyond that is, should you be okay with not storing the entire history of the blockchain? And I would say, like, fundamentally, yes. Because, so what if someone says like, oh, look, there was an invalid transaction 5 years ago on a chain? Well, at this point, you're not going to reorg the chain. At this point, you have to decide either you think the system is too corrupt and we shall never use it, or you have to just say like, that's how it is and we're going to work with this. And this is, by the way, how property rights work. Like when you look at property rights, at some point you can't just like go back forever and like trying to trace every single property right violation that might have happened like for centuries and centuries and centuries, or you don't have a workable system. Now, I think it's useful for archivists to keep a copy of the chain. Like, Some people should be keeping a copy of the chain. It's of interest, but I don't think the nodes necessarily have to keep a copy of the chain. So long as you have like one person, living, I don't know where, maybe they're living in Liberia or whatever it is, like willing to run one server with a blockchain, you'll be fine. Okay, so that I think takes care of attacks which puts illegal data into blocks, which already I think helps you a lot. But the problem is in Bitcoin space, they make it a huge deal that you can download the whole blockchain. And I don't think it's a huge deal. But let's say that you'll always have some people who run it. No, the most important thing is you don't want it into your UTXO set. If the UTXO set itself has bad data, that's a much bigger problem because then you cannot run a node.
True.
And being able to run live nodes, being able to run miners, that is far, far more important. So how do you do that? So here, Bitcoin is at the benefit compared to other smart contract platform because the UTXO set is not super expressive to begin with. But if you want it to be stronger than this, I think what you can do is you can rely on stateless clients. Basically, make it so that every transaction has to prove its entire state. Basically, saying look. And I don't know why there's still not a commitment to the there should be a Merkle commitment to the UTXO set in every block. That would make sense. And then you could have stateless client for Bitcoin. And if in your jurisdiction you cannot store certain UTXOs, then you don't store them. And the stateless clients will still prove that they're there. You're going to have a weaker version of validation, but you're still going to be able to do some validation. And then on top of that, you can put zero knowledge proof. So I think these are developments that can harden it. The other option is you go rollups. I think layer 2 solutions are great at dealing with this because oftentimes people look at rollups and they say, oh, that's a way to separate the execution from the consensus and the ordering of transaction, but it does more than that. It also separates owning the state, right? Whether or not you have an optimistic rollup or zero knowledge rollup, you need a single honest party, right, having access to the state. And people having access to make transactions, it's not needed that everyone has access to the state. So again, if there's a potential liability in storing the whole state, that is a very big defense that you get. So it's a benefit of having an architecture where you have your base blockchain that does consensus transaction ordering, and then execution and state is put inside something else where you only need a single honest party. And that's one of the many benefits of this architecture, which is what we're pursuing with Tezos X, which puts the emphasis on one layer 2 on top of the consensus. Sorry, this is extremely technical, but I didn't realize we were going to talk about that. But it's one of my.
It's great. No, I love it.
Hobby horse. I'm how do you deal with this? Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So, do tell me a little bit more about this new X, as you called it.
X, yeah. So the idea of Tezos X is every blockchain is scaling in some sense, and there's different ways to scale. Some people have decided to scale in a monolithic fashion. So a common example is beefy validators, and they're going to run in data centers, and will increase throughput, lower latency. Laudable goals, but is it the best way to do it? And then oftentimes is contrasted with this, the roll-up approach, the layer 2 approach that you can see in the Ethereum ecosystem, which is, no, we're going to run in parallel all these different roll-ups, and then they'll communicate with each other and bridge with the main chain and communicate that way. And then people look at this and they see and say, well, it sounds like the monolithic approach may be more centralizing, but this roll-up approach, it has a lot of friction, right? It's not convenient for users. They have to bridge. In practice, they're actually using custodial bridges for bridging between rollups. It's not that, it's not that great. And the position we're taking is that monolithic scaling is a good idea because you can actually do quite a bit with a powerful machine. Yeah. But you don't have to scale your L1 monolithically. You can scale your L2. You can have a big L2 monolith. And it sounds weird because it sounds like the whole benefit of L2 would be would be the parallel part. But no, the fact that you switch from an honest majority assumption to a single honest party assumption gives you loads of benefits. So that's the approach of Tezos X. It's one big roll-up on top of Tezos. Let the Tezos protocol, which has been very stable, very robust, focus on the staking and the consensus, and then move all the execution into this this rollup. Now, on top of that, it's supposed to come with batteries included, so support for mainstream programming languages like JavaScript, Python, and others. And I mean direct support, not just languages like look like it, but you can actually like compile the JavaScript runtimes and run them. Bridging, it also comes, on the Tezos network, we have data availability sampling, so you can actually scale your data availability on the base chain. So it's a whole thing. It's similar in some sense to what people call the rollup-centric roadmap of Ethereum with tank sharding, except that it's a rollup-centric roadmap that's concentrated on one powerful rollup.
That sounds amazing. I mean, how close are you all to accomplishing this or getting to a point where you feel comfortable this should be rolled out?
It's a progressive rollout and well on our way. So data availability sampling. So that's a technology, again, would be great to see this type of thing in Bitcoin, which is instead of everyone downloading every block, you download a shard of every block. So you have a portion of the block which can be which can then be reconstructed. That's in place. We already have a rollup called Etherlink, which is an EVM compatibility zone. So if you want to build EVM apps, you can launch them in this rollup. And then more execution environments are going to graft itself onto it and progressively building this Tezos X product. Oh, one thing I should add is like, imagine you're Solana, you want to decrease latency. Okay, the problem is you still want to have many validators around the world. So you're going to be always bound by the latency of where your next block producer is. And they're going to get consensus. You could get some pre-confirmations by telling people like, okay, go talk to the next block producer. But that's going to change all the time. So I can't pick my algorithm, my bot, I can't put it in a data center or like in a location is going to be close to the next block producers because that's going to change all the time. So what do you do? With a rollup, you get to have a sequencer. And if well designed, the sequencer doesn't have to be centralizing. The sequencer has very little power. All the sequencer does is it gets to organize the order of the next few transactions, and they don't have that much, and they have some power over the order of the next batch of transactions for the next couple seconds, and that's about it. And you can encrypt the transactions before that. So the latency you're able to get like this is always going to be 1 or 2 orders of magnitude better than the latency you would get from an L1. That's incompressible.
That's amazing.
And which is why, like, when people are going to, people are trying to do like order book dexes and so on and such, they will end up with building their own, own sequencers for the per dApp, essentially. Whereas you could just have the convenience of a very low latency L2. So L2s are superior to L1s for monolithic scaling is my big claim.
Your thesis. Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. So one quick question that's sort of related to that, but I'm wondering to you, what is the uppermost limit? The people are so focused on TPS, so transactions per second. Are we at a point where we're almost at a diminishing marginal return in terms of like you want 1 billion transactions per, like what is it that's going to stop that race? And is that race important?
I think it was for a while because people in the industry were very scared of the numbers. And this really, there were 2 moments where it became very visible. 2017, when the fee spike on Ethereum and people talked about CryptoKitties and how CryptoKitties, couldn't work because it didn't scale. And the second time was in 2021. People saw a lot of congestion on Ethereum. And it was a question is like, can blockchains ever scale? And since then, we have had system which, there's a difference between like a lot of transactions and scalable. In principle, scalable means the more machine you add to your system, the more capable it becomes. But in practice, absolute quantities do matter. If you have a not scalable system that does 1 million transactions per second, that's still much more meaningful than a scalable system that requires 10,000 computers to do 10 transactions per second, for example. I think we already have way more capacity across the industry than there's demand for transactions.
Okay.
And so it could well be that the clearing price of a transaction is 0 in the future. Like there's just like far more block space available than demand for transactions.
Okay, wonderful. So maybe one of the last questions I'm really
Oh,
curious to get
wonderful.
you.
It's terrible. It's terrible
Well,
news for blockchain.
no, I know, but I'm saying it wonderful. I get the essence of what you're saying. Um, in general, one of the things that I'm definitely wondering about is your thoughts around AI as it relates to blockchain. Um, when we're starting to talk about agents, agentic AI, and this flow, and clearly transactions per second is probably going to be part of this, how do agents fit into the blockchain world from your vision with Tezos and Network?
Yeah, so I mean, I think agents fits into the blockchain world like they fit into any other part of the internet. In some sense, like if you give, they like to consume APIs. They can do better than APIs. In fact, agents are capable of running a browser and actually going and clicking on the link and doing all this. But it's always easier for them with an API. And so, and payments are a very useful thing to do, and payments is a thing that blockchains do very well. So probably we'll see a lot of agents using blockchains for payments. It makes sense. They might also use, they don't have to use a blockchain. Like there's nothing stopping stopping someone running an agent from having like a Stripe API key and having and having their agent do payment by Stripe. But Stripe itself is doing stable coins and wants to do blockchain. So it's a good technology for that. So absolutely, we'll see agents use blockchains in the same way that we'll see agents use hotel booking and reservation systems and all of these other activities. And they are, I forgot the name for it. There's a type of server that people are building now for AI, which have like English language description.
MCP?
Yeah, MCP. Although right now there's way more builders of MCPs than consumers of MCP, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But it'll happen. So you can do MCP with Tezos, of course. People have built agents on Tezos who can do certain things. I used to say this. I say it less now because it feels less worth saying. But there was this wave of a hype for a while, I think a couple of years ago, and thankfully I think that has died down a little bit, which was, it's like it was AI needs blockchain. No, it doesn't. And I think people need payments. Payments are useful. AIs will make payments on blockchain. Yeah, but the idea that somehow blockchain was this missing link that was going to, and I say blockchain without an article because I'm being sarcastic.
Right.
It's a blockchain. It's a countable noun, but there's this idea that it was somehow so fundamental. It was just people saying look, there's a lot of. It was investor marketing, essentially. It's hey, you as an investor, you want to have exposure to AI, and you've already maxed out how many stocks of NVIDIA you bought. Look at this token. It has exposure to AI because I said AI and blockchain in the same sentence.
Yes.
That was a lot of the impetus. A lot of that is gone, and which is not so. There are legitimate use cases at the intersection of both, but they're not extraordinary. They're essentially what you'd expect.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So I want to be respectful of your time, but is there anything else that you wanted to mention about Tezos, things that you're working on, things that you see around the corner that we should be aware of that might be helpful?
Yeah. Oh, actually, there's something I wanted to say about agents. Sorry.
Yeah.
I actually mentioned that in a talk recently at Token 2049. Well, blockchains should be backends, right? They're essentially these databases and backends, but today they are far closer to consumer brands or online communities, which is strange. And I think part of this has to do with distribution. So people still see blockchains as a distribution channel. So they'll build a dApp on a blockchain because it gives them a certain distribution. The more people use agents, the less that's going to be true, because you might just say oh, I recognize this name, I'll just use that. That might work for a human as a heuristic. It doesn't work for an agent. Your agent doesn't care.
Right.
Your agent knows all the blockchain out there. It's just going to be whatever works and whatever is cheapest and gets the job done for you. So that commodifies blockchains even further, which again, if all the blockchains are scaling and transaction costs are going to zero, and then people are not going to be loyal to a particular blockchain anyway because their agent is doing all the work in the background, that's also an interesting dynamic to watch. On Tezos, so we talked about Tezos X. I think it's an exciting roadmap to make the blockchain even better, even more developer friendly. And I think one of the impetus for supporting JavaScript and Python and other languages is that these are the languages where the data sets are the biggest and where LLM coders are the best at the moment. I think it will change over time because there's enough cross learning so that if you train your LLM on a bunch of Python, it will still get better at doing C, for example.
Yes.
And then at some point it will be about the intrinsic characteristic of the language as opposed to how much training data there is, but training data does matter a great deal. So in a spirit that most code is going to be written by LLMs, it makes sense to support the most popular languages. In terms of applications, lots of exciting things. One of the last things I love to point out is that you can buy uranium on Tezos, on uranium.io. So there's tokenized uranium. It's one of the most important commodities in the world. There's this one live spot market for it, and that spot market is running on Tezos and Etherlink.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, I think I read about that. It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, so I think it's quite exciting. In general, there's been a growing finance ecosystem or DeFi ecosystem on Etherlink. I think we should, as an industry, we should start saying DeFi and start just saying finance. Something just accept that finance now takes place on blockchains.
Just when people are starting to say RWA, real world assets too.
Yeah, just call it finance.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
Steadily climbing TVL, steadily raising activity on Tezos in general.
Yes, my goodness. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your time, your wisdom, and your passion clearly here today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Tech Snippets Today with Joseph Raczynski.